We got this 327 back from the machine shop. It's 60 over stock, so it's 4060. And everything checks out good. It looks good.
A 57 Chevy guy's high school hot rod. Finally getting it done.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and build this thing up for him, get it cleaned up, dry it off, and go from there.
Got the 327 all painted up, and I got the camshaft stuck in it. I'm going to go ahead and check the push rod length so we can get the push rods ordered in time. What I like to do is I'll take a used lifter and I'll tack weld it and stick it in there, so that way, because the new lifters ain't pumped up full of oil yet, and that make it kind of misleading on the push rod length if the lifter's not solid. So I'm going to stick a used gasket on there, and then bolt the head on there, a couple bolts with the head, and then I'll start checking the length. I got the head just snugged on, and I put a used gasket on it just to make up the thickness, so that way that we don't have no inaccurate measurements. These are actually a really nice head. They're a crick float head, and I went through and checked them out and checked the seat width, checked spring pressure, and honestly, for an assembled head, these trick flows are a really nice head, and I like that they look like the old camel humps because you don't have the accessory bolt holes on it. I run a dart head on the Shine motor, and it's when I first got them, I got these are the first ones I ever got that were assembled, and they were a mess. I ended up having to do a lot of work to them to make them like they should be. So if you're interested, if you're in the market for wanting to get an assembled head, I would really highly recommend the trick flow head. These are really nice. So I have the push rod length checker in there, and it's all the way in, and it looks like it's too long still. I'll go ahead and show you why I think so. You want that roller in the center of that valve. Turn that over. I might not be able to do it and hold the camera steady at the same time. Turn that camshaft over, and look how it's kind of running way over the top. So I'm gonna stick in a stock push rod and go from there. I got more than enough, and then I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm starting to throw them away. I'll stick that push rod in, and I'll be back. I got a stock push rod in there now, and I can already tell it's way still too long. I'm probably gonna have to go ahead and make up a new push rod length checker, something that's a little shorter, and we'll go from there. So it looks like we'll need a push rod, measures 7624, so we'll need a 7600 length push rod. They only come in 50s intervals. Yeah, we got the crank back from the machine shop, and started checking bearing clearance. All the main bearing clearance checked out okay. 6 of the rods checked out okay, but 2 rods were tight. I'm going to show you, if I can do this and record at the same time, why it's very important to check for clearance. Here's my number 7. This is number 7. That's about 1.5 thousandths. That's 1 3/4 thousandths. That's really good. That's what I'd like to see on this. And I'll show you on the number 3 and number 8. They're really tight. Here's number 8. How tight that is compared to that number 7. This is why you should not just throw a motor together without checking clearance. I rarely get a motor together that has it all perfect. You always have to check everything. Always have to do something to gain larger clearance or tighter clearance or whatnot. Probably did like one of them that probably checked out okay. So don't ever just throw a motor together. Actually check everything. So now I'm just gonna pull the bearings out of 3 and 8. I'm gonna take them to the machine shop and they're gonna hone out this big end of the rod a little bit. It only has to be just a thousandth of an inch, but you know, a thousandth actually makes a difference in this case because you're gaining more room for more oil to go inside there. Okay, at this point I'll put the crankshaft in, and put the crankshaft in without a rear main seal, and I'll put some light 30 weight oil on it. First of all, I'm going to check the in play of the crankshaft. I like to see between 7 and 10 thousandths. What I'm doing, I'm taking a screwdriver between the main journal here. I'll pry over and see where we're at. So we're at 0. And say 8.5, 0, 8.5. So we got 8.5 thousandths in play, and that's good for this application. Then what I'd like to do is I'll spin the crank and I'll make sure that the crankshaft turns freely, and make sure the crank isn't bent or any of the problems. All the bearing clearances are fine, but that don't mean that each main cap's in line with each other. So I'm going to make sure the crank spins freely. Now it seems like it does. It's a small journal, so it's kind of harder to get a hold of. Then I'll pull the after I turn around, I'm gonna pull the mains out and make sure there ain't no score marks on it or anything. Okay, I got the crank in, and I'm gonna start checking piston ring gap I'm gonna start checking each piston ring gap as I throw them on the pistons. Normally this style they're okay, but I'll check them anyway. I want to see about 16 thousandths on this here. I got a 16,000 feeler gauge. I'm sticking it between there, and it's fine. Normally these are fine, but I check them anyway.
I'm getting ready to put the oil pan on here, and I'm just checking gasket alignment, make sure everything's going to line up with the bolt holes. I'm going to run a bead of RTV. I'm going to put some goobers right in there and run it around each hole, and a line, and then around each hole, and then a line, and then around each hole. And you pretty much get the idea all the way down. But we've got the short block completely put together, and this thing's coming out pretty well. It's going to be a nice, pretty motor. So, like I said, I'm going to get that pan. If you're wondering what these are, this just helps us on the test stand to drain it easier, so we're not gooping antifreeze all over the place. We just open these up and drain it right into a bucket. And then we take those out of the block when we give it to the owner of the motor. So I'm going to throw this pan on, and then we're going to flip her over and start looking at the heads. We've got the head gasket already on, and it is time for the head. Got both heads torqued on, and I'm working on getting the rockers aligned right now, and I've got to say, this is, I think, the best that this has ever gone. Normally we got to cut these right there if they're not adjustable and guide each one of them individually and weld it back up, but I'm slapping these on, and oh my god, they're just, I'll show you, I mean, they're just doing very well. Look at, that's perfect. Don't get much better than that. And it's all going well, so I'm going to finish up this side and start on that side and go from there. Something interesting about the old 327s is that instead of having breathers on the valve covers, they're sealed off and they have basically a breather in the lifter valley here. And that lets pressure escape without bringing oil with it. It's like a baffled type deal. Comes out right there. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. You don't see that too often. Been a while since we last recorded, but this is where we're at right now. We've got everything on there ready to go. I got to put a little bit more antifreeze in here. But other than that, I'm going to go ahead and check spark. We've got fuel to it. Got everything going all right. And I'm going to see if this thing fires. So, like I said, I'm going to go check spark and make sure everything's good. Check everything before you try it. That way you know everything's working. It's easier to troubleshoot. But check it and fire this thing. I'm going to go ahead and set the camera up. And when I do get it fired, I'm going to let it run right at 2,000 RPM. I'll probably up the idle to that. And then I'm going to let it build heat all the way up to about 180, 190. And I'm going to go ahead and kill it. And then I'm going to keep running it through heat cycles. That way we can break this thing in real nice. So that's what I'm going to do now. All right, here we go. First run was a success, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust the rockers again, make sure that they're all good, and then we'll go ahead and start it up again and still run it at 2,000 RPM and let it build some heat and then kill it. This is a very important part of a motor's life, and it's got to be, the braking process has to be done right. You just take this thing, start it, and start ripping on it, and it's not going to last very long for a flat tap it. So we'll go ahead and start it up again, let it run at 2,000, and build some heat and kill it. We had a bit of trouble getting this thing tuned up and getting it to run right. It would run good and then come down, so go and go back and forth, and that kind of points to a vacuum leak. So there was a vacuum leak right back in here that we fixed, and we rebushed the throttle shaft because it was also leaking vacuum through there. Well, we assume it is because it was loose, but we rebushed the secondary throttle shaft, and we're gonna go ahead and fire this thing up and see what happens. That's it. We're going to go ahead and tear this thing down and
give it one last good cleaning, and send it on its way.